Lena Headey and Stefan James star in a new MGM Plus original series.
Your ship just crashed.
What happened?
From the producers of Orphan Black and Invasion.
No one escapes Beacon 23.
And executive producer of The Walking Dead.
What do you want from me? What am I supposed to do?
You were meant to come here, so was I.
We could do this together. I can't let you die here.
Beacon 23, new series. Watch now, only on MGM Plus.
Hey, it's Storyworthy. Today on the show, author Robert David Crane talks about meeting Jack Nicholson.
Jack came down the stairs wearing a navy blue bathrobe with a bat pin on the lapel. Bat pin, this is 1972. He might have just gotten out of bed, although it was well past lunchtime. As I discovered over the next several hours spent talking about film, Jack wasn't wearing anything under that robe, as he inadvertently flashed me a couple of times. After finally switching off the tape recorder, we took a few commemorative photos for our benefit, Chris and me, not Jack's, and left the house on cloud 99.
Today on the show, author Robert David Crane talks about meeting Jack Nicholson. Stay close.
Hi, it's Robert Crane, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show or a new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed the show last week with writer, author, and producer Bruce Ferber. Bruce Ferber is a hell of an accomplished man. He was the showrunner on Home Improvement, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and many, many other incredible sitcoms. And then he goes on to become an author, and he's actually writing fiction now. And he has a wonderful new book out called I Buried Paul. So we talked about that last week. And then we also talked about Bruce's school project that he made in elementary school, where he needed cotton, and he was a little boy, couldn't find the cotton, and what he found was not supposed to be used for crafts. But anyway, it's super funny. Go back, listen to Bruce Ferber, great guy and very, very talented. So go back, you guys. But not today, because today I'm here with another really interesting man. Robert David Crane is here today, and he is a writer, and he brings forth the topic meeting Jack Nicholson. And of course, that's intriguing, because who wouldn't want to meet Jack Nicholson? Right? Right, Robert?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, my God.
And this is going to take place in the early 70s. Yeah. So this is before you were born. But,
no. I was born in the late 60s. Don't get me wrong.
And this is during a time of, for me anyway, the 60s and 70s revolution in film.
Yeah.
To me, it just took off.
No, it did. It did. The early 70s and all of the 70s were a wonderful time for filmmaking. And Jack Nicholson, of course, just hit it, starting with Easy Rider. And then he just flew through the 70s with some of the best movies of all time. So I'm definitely anxious to hear your story. But you've got a lot of other interesting things going on in your life, Robert David Crane. I'm telling you what. Here's something I found very interesting about you. In the late 60s, you get called up for the Vietnam War. You get called for the draft, and your number is 55. That must have been terrifying. Yeah. Can you describe that day?
They used to have the draft on live television. So I'm sitting there in the summer of 1969, the glorious Woodstock summer of 69, and I'm watching this live event. Ping pong balls with numbers on them are being dropped. It's like a game show. So June 27th, my day, June 27th, number 55. I'm looking around going, I'm dead. First of all, I don't support the Vietnam War. I think it's totally wrong that we're there. And secondly, 55, I'm going to be a 18-year-old guy coming back in a basket, No. So I definitely knew I was going to college at that point.
Did you not want to go to college before that?
I was doing a weird job with a guy I'm going to be mentioning later, my co-author, it turns out, on a number of projects, Chris Fryer. We had invented license plate frames for colleges. So
oh my gosh,
top,
are you kidding me?
No. On
wait
the
a
top,
minute, wait a minute. Tell me you made money from this. Tell me this made money.
We did make some money. Just enough to pay our expenses, and we did a lot of traveling, and it was fun. But we would say, like on top of the frame that goes around your license plate, it would say Trojans on top and USC on the bottom with their logos, or Bruins and UCLA on the bottom, with the Bruins. And then you put them on over your regular license plate. And we did well for a few years.
Wait a minute. Seriously, Bob, tell me something right now and be honest with me.
Yes.
Did you patent this idea?
We couldn't patent it because, and I can't give you a legal explanation at this point because I don't remember most of it, but it was like a universal thing that we just tapped into for a while. But there was no way we could seal it up. No.
Everybody has a license plate thing.
Yeah, I know.
That's unbelievable. And by the way, I play tennis and pickleball with a buddy of mine who is a dean down at USC. And he has this hot Jaguar, like this great car. Yeah. And on the back, he's got this beautiful plate in the exact same color of the car and the gold, USC Trojans. Like, it's so beautiful. And I'm thinking, you're the guy that invented that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Chris and I were at Zuma Beach one day during the summer of '69, goofing off. This is before my number was picked and I went into a depression. So we're sitting there at the beach, and for some reason, on the way home, we're driving home through Malibu Canyon back to the valley where we lived, and this idea just popped into our heads because we were looking at different plates. Oh, hey, there's Arizona, there's Colorado, and we just, hey, we're both going to college. What if you did colleges, around your license plate? And we started it.
Unbelievable. That is really funny. So you get called for the draft, then you decide to go to college, then you apply to USC?
It came quickly around the draft time. Things went very quickly, and I was able to get into the USC film department. George Lucas had just been there a couple of years before.
Of course.
Some other big names. And I was lucky enough to get in there. Unfortunately, you had to take all the requirements. I found out. I thought I was just going to be taking film classes. No, biology, geography, huh?
Well, yeah, it's college. Oh. It's college, Bob.
So I was just hanging on. Meantime, when they passed number 55 in the draft and kept moving on, I sighed. A sigh of relief.
No kidding. And when you went to USC, did you stay here in L.A. then? You were in L.A., of course.
Yes. Actually, Chris and I, did the dorm life at USC for a couple of years until we got tired of that. And then he went off and got an apartment. I got an apartment. So.
Yeah. Now, I know that you have co-authored with that same person you're talking about, like 9 books. Is that true?
No, actually, with Chris, it'll be 4 books that we've been involved
4 books
with.
that you worked on together. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that includes the aforementioned Jack Nicholson, Bruce Dern, the Crane book about my showbiz family, and a new one that we both have a short story in called Beyond Where the Buses Run Stories, which we stole the title from Bruce Dern because Bruce always said he played characters that, were out there in the beaten path. So.
And he would say beyond the beaten path, beyond where the buses run?
Yeah, he didn't say it exactly, but we kind of stole the concept from him, and I think we reworded it. But he was just one of those guys who played. Well, anybody who knows Bruce Dern, he plays characters that are not on Main Street. I mean, they're off.
Stunning. Yeah. Remember Blue Velvet?
Oh yeah.
I mean, come on. Crazy stuff, man.
Yeah.
All right. So today you bring forth the topic, meeting Jack Nicholson, and I'm really excited to hear about this. But I would be remiss not to mention, the elephant in the room, and that is that your father was the very, very handsome and energetic and just charismatic, fabulous actor, Bob Crane from Hogan's Heroes.
Oh, thank you, Christy. Yeah.
This man, Bob Crane, what an amazing talent. Your dad just made everybody smile. He was so outgoing and gregarious, and he just looked like the nicest guy in the world. You know what I mean?
He was. He was the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, and Bob Crane, it was around, I'm thinking about like same era as like Gilligan's Island and some of those old, and you remember Bob Denver, he played Gilligan, and when I was thinking like, oh yeah, Bob Denver, and then there's Bob Crane, and then there's Bob, like that. Yeah,
there were a slew of Bobs at the time. There was Bob Culp on I Spy, Bob Conrad on Wild Wild West, Bob Denver, Bob Newhart, there's a string of Bobs. Yeah.
Sure. It's so funny. And then you of course, you were a writer for Playboy for 20 years. So you've been a writer really your whole life. Yeah. And then you write all these books with your buddy Chris. And then you co-author the book Crane, Sex, Celebrity, and My Father's Unsolved Murder. Right. And this came out in 2015, tracing your dad's life, his career, his murder, and the legal and criminal case. You talk about your mom, you talk about your sisters, you talk about your father's second wife, as well as your own life in dealing with your dad's confusing legacy. And one of the things that is so confusing about your father's legacy is that his murder, which right off the bat, your dad was murdered. I mean, it's just insane. It's so upsetting that it was unsolved. I mean, it just seems beyond belief that it was unsolved.
And here we are, Christine, 44 years later, and it's unsolved. It's cold. It's colder than many people's careers right now. It's just it'll never be solved, unfortunately. And a lot of people have possibly involved with it have died since then. So the cast of characters, it's small.
Right. His buddy, the carpenter guy, he passed. So that's and it's interesting though, because as an unsolved murder, it's never going to stop coming up, right? Because people always want to solve the unsolved.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle.
June,
so you're kind of stuck with it.
Yes. Every June 29th, which happens to be 2 days after my birthday, which is why I remember it, is the day. So, you have reporters that are still interested in the case calling, and, it just never will go away.
Well, also, true crime, for whatever reason, is so hot.
Yes.
People love true crime over the last 3-4 years. It's just made this huge surgence. And so I'm wondering, is it insurgents? Did I make that wrong? What's that word?
Insurgents. Yeah.
It made a huge insurgence. So so I'm sure for you it never stops. And I don't want to go too far into this because it is dark. But when you turned 49, could you believe that that's the age your father was murdered?
No, it's so funny you mention that, because when I did, I was completely freaked out, like something was going to happen to me. So I took that day very carefully and slowly because I was just suspicious about something happening. And of course it didn't. But I remember I was 27 when he was 49, and he was 2 weeks shy of 50. And maybe not so much with him, but with his dad. His dad died at 69 of a heart attack. And I remember, I was younger then. I remember, 69, that's a nice life. And then now, as I've passed it, Whoa. No, wait a minute. No.
90 is a good
90.
life.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it's so true because 49 is so young. He
Yes.
should have easily had 30 more years of life.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it is terribly young. And that means when he had you, he was only 22.
Yes. Yeah, my mom was 20.
Babies.
Can you
They're
believe that?
babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can believe it because my parents were the same. I mean, they're babies. It was my mother, by the time she was 30, she had 6 children.
Oh, my God. Wow.
It's too crazy. So what I'm thinking about is that your father being so young when he had you, it's probably part of the reason why he was such a fun dad. Because I've read about you a little bit, Bob, and I've looked into you. And I remember one of these things I heard is that you guys had a pool at your house, and it was so much fun to have this swimming pool, and how your dad would actually make up like charts, and you'd play these games.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, what was that all about?
Yeah, Christine, we had a pool league where because I was 10, 11 years old. So I stood in the low end of the pool. It wasn't a huge pool, but, it was a pool. I stood in the low end with a short bat, wooden bat, baseball bat. And my dad would, stand where he could, as deep as he could, but stand, and throw a rubber ball. And then I'd try to hit it. And it would go, in a certain part in the pool was a double, another part was a triple. If you hit it out of the pool, it was a home run. And then vice versa. Then I pitched to my dad. Yeah. And same thing. We had, I remember one time he hit it over the house. That was like Babe Ruth. And we had a schedule. We had playoffs. We had a World Series. And we called it the Pool League. So it was baseball in a pool.
Did you have friends over?
Yeah, sometimes friends would come over during the playoffs, because depending on, I was certain teams, my dad was certain teams, and depending on which teams were playing, the Yankees against the Phillies, they would want to see who won it. And, they were amazed. It was like, these two guys are crazy. But we had a blast.
Well, I love being a parent, and I mean, I just have one kid, but I've really enjoyed like reliving all these games that we play, and tossing balls and hitting tennis with my daughter or whatever. Like, I love the idea of being a kid again, as it were. Yeah. So it sounds like your dad was that kind of parent.
He was a big kid. Probably should not have been married. Married twice. My mom first and my stepmom later. Probably shouldn't have been married, but just a big kid. Loved to have fun.
But wait a minute. Here's the thing, though, Bob. Think about it. In the late 60s, in the 60s, in the 70s, what do you mean he shouldn't have been married? That's what you did. That's what everybody did. Like, it's not like he could have thought, like, I'll just have a bachelor life. Like, that wasn't what people did.
No, you're correct, because my folks come from Stamford, Connecticut. And back in the late 40s, early 50s, exactly what you said. You got married, you had children, the husband went off on his job, and the wife stayed at home and took care of the kids. And
you got to get a house, right? Yeah, no, I think that's very normal. I mean, my parents, same thing, got married when they were 18 and 19.
Wow.
And, married 27 years and then divorce.
Yeah.
Because how could you possibly know what you want at 18? What is that?
Yeah, exactly.
I barely know myself when I was 40.
Yeah, I still don't know myself. But they got to, I guess my reference is the sexual revolution in the 60s and 70s. That's when my dad, kind of took off from home life.
Well, that book that you wrote that we chatted about, Crane, Sex, Celebrity, and My Father's Unsolved Murder, I read part of it. I didn't get to read the whole book because I just kind of hooked up with you this week. But I did read some of the reviews about the book. And one of the reviews I read, well, there were a couple of reviews. One of them said, what a great chance to see a more balanced review of a star that was flawed, but genuinely a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And now another person reviews and says, it's informative and interesting. I enjoyed the book, which is extremely well written by his oldest son with his longtime friend. But I really don't understand Crane. He was an attractive, likable actor who was deeply into pornography and didn't mind sharing that with people. You get the feeling that he was totally detached, maybe a little empty.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that review. And Paul Schrader, the writer-director, tapped into that he made a film about my dad and the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s called Autofocus. And
Greg Kinnear. Greg Kinnear played your dad?
He did. He did a great job. Yeah.
Were you on set? Did you get to go on set?
I was on set. I was an advisor.
Were you?
So I selfishly got involved because I loved Paul Schrader films in his scripts. So I just wanted to hang out. Yeah. Did you hang out like in Video Village with everybody? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I got to be there as much as I wanted to be there. And in fact, Paul Schrader says, listen, there's a scene where a magazine writer interviews your dad. I played it. So my God. I'm in a scene playing a magazine writer interviewing Bob Crane.
That was so generous for them to give you that. Yeah. That was such a generous thing to do. How funny.
Yeah. And of course, for Paul, everything was first take for me because I'm not an actor, and he just kind of let me say my couple of lines and that was it. But I'm sitting there with Greg Kinnear, who's behaving like my dad. And I'm going, wow, this is bizarre.
He seems, Greg Kinnear does seem like a real joker and also very gregarious.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He's a great choice for it.
Let me ask you, when you're there on set, I mean, this is kind of weird, but did anybody ever come up to you and say, I am so sorry about your dad?
Yes.
Did people say that?
Yeah. I have people, and you can see the approach. And they have a kind of a weird look on it themselves because this is something they have to tell me. I understand that, but it's just kind of it's sad ultimately and awkward, and it's so funny that you mentioned this. It's someone I barely know would say this to me, and my family, my mom, my stepdad, my sisters. We have never talked about this because my mom is the small town woman, and her family, you just sweep it under the carpet and move on to the next thing. So we've never had a, let's hold hands and dance around a fire moment or anything. And it'll never happen.
That sucks. Yeah. That sucks because that is the sort of thing that people need. Maybe other people don't need it. Maybe they can just be stoic and pretend it didn't happen or sweep it under the rug. But it's selfish of them to think that they're the only ones that have a say in what we can process.
Yes.
Just because they can process it that way doesn't mean you process it that way.
Yeah. Well, in the case of my mother, she has never processed it. It's just a sweep it away, keep looking forward, keep moving.
Is she still alive?
She is. She just turned 92.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Did she ever remarry?
Yes, she did. Chuck, my stepdad, they're coming up on 50 years of marriage.
That's nice. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, he saved our family. I mean, after my folks were divorced, my mom was devastated. And then a couple of years after that, she met Chuck, and they hit it off and then got married, and he has saved her and my family from ruin.
Wow, that is really interesting. That man must be very special.
Yeah, we call him Saint Charles.
Yeah, because he put up with everybody.
Oh, God, yeah.
Saint Charles.
Yeah. I'll give you an idea of a moment, if I may.
Yeah.
My dad used to bring his mother over to see my mom after the divorce. One day at the kitchen table at my mom and Chuck's house are Mom, Chuck, my stepdad, my dad, his mother, my mom's mother, and I think my dad's brother was there as well. And my mom's sister happened to call her right at that moment from Connecticut. And my mom said, "You will never guess who is
Wow.
sitting at this table right now.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
It's bizarre thing. Yeah.
Well, it was good that they could have like a modern family even then.
Yeah.
You know, or understand how it fits together.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
just about love and all that. It's not, you know, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would think that grieving over your father would unfortunately be a decades-long thing for you because it keeps coming up.
Yeah, in fact, I've written a little nonfiction piece that I've mailed to everybody, and nobody wants to publish it because I talk about how phony news agencies are when they use the word closure. They want, for their little 90-second report, they want the little ribbon on the package at the end.
Right.
And now they've come to closure for the family. Really? The shot of the mother, the shot of the mother sobbing, being handed the U.S. flag folded up. Now it's closure because her 18-year-old son got killed in Afghanistan? No, I don't think it's closure. It's never closure.
It's never closure.
I hate that word.
Yeah,
So
it's a terrible word. That's so true.
Yeah. I wrote a piece called Canceled Closure.
Good
but
idea.
No one will publish it. Nobody wants to bite that. So.
Well, still, though, can you put it somewhere else? I mean, there's lots of options now.
Yeah, I may throw it out. I'll throw it out on your website.
Yeah, man, let's put it on my website. I'll take it. Bob Crane. It's a Bob Crane exclusive, right on Storyworthy. All right, you guys, we're going to get over to Bob's story in just a second about meeting Jack Nicholson. I can't wait. But before we do, I wanted to remind everybody to tune into My Life in 3 Songs. This is my brand new podcast over on Spotify. I talk with comedians about the songs that have influenced their lives, songs that have impacted them. Not necessarily the comedian's favorite song, but songs that paint a picture of where the comedian is from and who that person is. So please, you guys, check out My Life in 3 Songs over on Spotify, and also follow My Life in 3 Songs on social media at My Life in 3 Songs. And of course, you'll find Storyworthy over there too at Storyworthy. All right, you guys, he's here right now. You hear him talking. Bob Crane, he is a writer. He wrote for Playboy for 20 years, which is a lot. So you're the reason why everybody was buying the magazine, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you
the
very
articles,
much.
right? Isn't it the articles?
Oh, yeah, the articles, absolutely, yeah.
Did you ever do some pieces that you loved for Playboy?
Yeah. My favorite piece, I used to do 20 questions. That was there was the long interview in the front and then a shorter interview in the back called 20 Questions. And I worked with a great editor named John Resnick. He was in Chicago. I was in Los Angeles. And one day I pitched him Coco, the signing gorilla.
Okay.
Coco, you may remember, held the little kitten in her arms. And
I do
she
remember.
was on the cover of magazines and stuff. And she knew, at the time, about 600 words, English words that she could sign.
Right.
So I pitched this to John Resnick, and he said yes. So I flew up north. They had a compound out of Palo Alto, up in the mountains.
Okay.
I flew up there, drove up, and I knew I was at that compound because it had an aroma about it. And this, not bad, not what you're thinking. But I knew this place was different. So I drove in. I spent the day with Dr. Penny Patterson, who was studying Coco and teaching her language and communicating with her. And I asked my questions. Penny would sign them to Coco. Coco would literally have her hand on her chin, thinking about it, and then sign back an answer to Penny, who then told me, and then I wrote it down. And it was unbelievable.
It's a gorilla, right?
Yes.
Was the gorilla in a cage, or was the gorilla
No.
was he? Where was the gorilla?
Gorilla was right in front of me.
So, So you're in a chair, Penny's in a chair, and the gorilla's sitting there.
Yes. Yeah.
Were you afraid?
No. She is so sweet and so easygoing. I was never afraid.
Did it paw you?
No. I mean, we touched, and but just Coco was interested in gold and silver in your mouth.
Oh
teeth.
my God!
So Penny said, "Can you show her your teeth?" So I went up to her, opened my mouth, and I had plenty of silver and gold in my mouth, and she's just inches away from me, just staring at my teeth.
God.
And then, because it was I forget what the question was, but she signed back something about teeth. And at the time, there was a male gorilla named Michael, and they were trying to get Michael and Coco together to, produce offspring. But they never got together because Coco rejected him as basically being a slob and too stupid for it. So they never made it. Yeah, she was incredible. Yeah.
Have you met any other gorillas?
My only face-to-face with a gorilla. Yeah, she's
That is fabulous.
A mountain gorilla. Yeah, unbelievable.
But see, now, wait a minute. That is what we're talking about. When people said they read Playboy for the articles, there's a great example. That's a great example.
Yeah.
And also, at least in the 70s, as I recall, Playboy was sort of like, it was very soft porn, and people just had it on the coffee table. Like, it wasn't slutty at all. In fact, if you just had the New York Times and then a Playboy, it just seemed like you were very cosmopolitan.
Yeah, different times. You could never do that now, but so the joke that you said about reading the articles, it was true for me. Of course I looked at the photos, but I wanted to see who was interviewed, who were the writers that month, that kind of thing. So I actually did read it, and I was just lucky to be a part of it for a while.
Yeah, I think it's tremendous. And then you went on to be the author of Crane, Sex, Celebrity, and My Father's Unsolved Murder. Did you write that alone, or was Chris with you on that?
No, Chris was with me on that. We had done a book on Jack Nicholson, a book with Bruce Dern, and then I finally decided I want to tell a story because it's really a unique combination of biography, autobiography, memoir, and true crime, like you mentioned. Yeah. So it's got all of it in that.
Yeah,
and
it really,
Chris, I work with Chris on that.
And so when you ask Chris to co-author this book with you, that means he has to get as deep into the murder as you did.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's willing. He's like, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, he is a fearless writer, and probably of contemporaries, he's the smartest person I know.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Those are big words.
He would push. He would go, well, why did you go there? Well, what color was that? My little brain is like hurting after a while. I don't want, I'm kicking. I don't want to go, And then when you did that, did you, and that he was like Martin Scorsese on this book, just push.
Oh, you're so fortunate to have a friend like that. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. Yeah. All right, you guys, you can find Bob over on Facebook under Robert Crane, and you can also view his author page on Amazon at Robert David Crane. All right, you guys, wherever you are, put your hands together for the very talented Robert Crane.
During the early 1970s, my friend and writing partner Chris Fryer and I had become great observers of the ascendant star of Jack Nicholson. Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, and Carnal Knowledge were big, important films, at least to us. Jack represented an honesty and abandon that I had seen elsewhere only in old Marlon Brando films. Nicholson crying in front of his paralyzed father in 5 Easy Pieces was a landmark moment for me. It was a shocking and spellbinding scene. How could you be a man and allow yourself to show emotion like that in front of millions of people? I was stunned by it, but I felt nothing but admiration. Ultimately, I wanted to be like that character. I wanted to be that honest and open with other people. That particular scene spoke to me about my relationship with my dad because except when I was a really young kid, I could never cry in front of him. I wouldn't allow myself to be that exposed. Seeing Nicholson do that was a revelation. The semester after the release of 5 Easy Pieces, Chris and I took a class at USC called The Film Heroes of the 30s and 60s, taught by screenwriter Stephen Karff. And we had the idea of teaming up to interview Jack Nicholson as the anti-hero for the ages. It never occurred to us that a couple of tyros from Tarzana and USC Film School might not be able to talk to Jack Nicholson for the class project. We just didn't know any better. I had seen Jack once on a film panel at USC, and at that point in his career, he was a great supporter of film and foreign cinema and up-and-coming filmmakers. He'd been to the Cannes Film Festival with his directorial debut, Drive, he said, but he was still accessible enough that he could be persuaded to make an appearance at a college. That was well before the curtain of opportunity closed for nobodies to get near Jack Nicholson. Talking to Jack Nicholson was remarkably easy. Through a family connection of Chris's, we got what turned out to be Jack's home phone number, though we didn't know it at the time. I dialed it, and damned if the guy himself didn't answer the phone on the second ring. I knew who it was, but I still asked for Mr. Nicholson just to be polite, and he asked, "Who's calling?" And I introduced myself and launched into my pitch for an interview. To our incredible surprise and elation, Jack Nicholson agreed to sit down with us and talk film. It was absolutely unreal. Chris and I were bouncing off the walls. Now, Jack invites us up to his house on Mulholland Drive to illustrate how different the world was in 1972. There was no gate on the driveway. No gate. The same driveway Jack shared with his next-door neighbor, guess who? Marlon Brando. Same driveway.
Get out.
We rolled up to the open front door and were escorted into the two-story ranch house as Michelle Phillips, Moms and the Papas, Jack's girlfriend at the time, passed us in the foyer. Chris and I exchanged looks. We're trying to be cool as we stepped down into the living room. We were in a different world. There was a large, plush, brown suede couch opposite the wall of windows that overlooked Franklin Canyon in Los Angeles. The house was comfortable, lived in. I felt pretty much at ease, even though I was about to meet one of my film heroes. Jack came down the stairs wearing a navy blue bathrobe with a bat pin on the lapel. Bat pin, this is 1972. He might have just gotten out of bed, although it was well past lunchtime. As I discovered over the next several hours spent talking about film, Jack wasn't wearing anything under that robe, as he inadvertently flashed me a couple of times. After finally switching off the tape recorder, we took a few commemorative photos for our benefit, Chris and me, not Jack's, and left the house on cloud 99. We were so juiced that Chris almost killed us, spinning out his Porsche on a Mulholland curve, and we did a 360 into a cloud of dust. We came to a stop between the telephone pole and the edge of the cliff. As the dust settled, we could hear our pounding hearts and then laughed like lunatics. Needless to say, we got A's in that class. So serendipitously, after that first interview, Chris and I, separately and together, began bumping into Jack around L.A. I saw him at a Rolling Stones concert at the Forum, and Chris ran into Jack at an anti-war pro-McGovern rally at UCLA. Jack was always where the action was. A side note, too, depending on the event, he had a Mercedes 600, for the Rolling Stones concert, and he had a Volkswagen Bug for the pro-McGovern anti-war rally. Because these chance meetings made us think we were becoming pals, we did the next logical thing. We decided to write a book about our new best friend. There had never been a book about Jack Nicholson, and we felt it was high time and that we were just the guys to do it. Frankly, in 1972, the name Jack Nicholson wasn't yet on the American public's radar screen. On more than one occasion, when I mentioned the idea to a family member or friend, they'd go, "Gee, Bobby, I didn't know you were that interested in golf." Before proceeding, that's Jack Nicholas. Before proceeding, we called Jack and asked his permission. Amazingly, he gave us the thumbs up, though to this day, I think he felt nothing would ever come of it. And he was just merely...
Wait a second. You called him back, and he answers, and he says, yeah, Bob Crane.
Yeah, we were still fresh in his mind. So we then pitched him on a book. We wanted to expand the initial couple of hours of film talk with him into a larger project because there had never been anything written about him. And he had a career that went back 15 years before Easy Rider that most people did not know about.
Yeah.
So
By the way, did you mention your dad at all? I mean, I know television's totally different, but he was the star of Hogan's Heroes.
No.
Did Jack watch?
No, Jack was not a television person, even though he did a few TV episodes for work. Before Easy Rider, he was on the Andy Griffith Show. Jack Nicholson. Yeah, I mean that's just trying to make the rent. That's years ago. So he was film, strictly film.
Yeah.
So anyway, he gave us the go ahead, kind of just getting us off his shoulder. Go. So Chris and I immediately drew up a list of all the people who had worked with Jack, going back years before Easy Rider, and that we wanted to talk to. Everybody from Roger Corman, Bruce Dern, Ann Margaret, Monty Hellman to Mike Nichols, Robert Evans, Bob Rafelson, and Dennis Hopper were on that list. Then we started making phone calls. 1 million phone calls to agents, publicists, assistants, anybody with a connection to Jack. And back to the license plate frames, because we used to do cold calling to colleges, this all came in handy for cold calls. Most of the time when we said Jack, the person on the other end okayed the connection, and all the restraints fell away.
Sure.
All this crazy running around for the book was done completely on spec, which you know about, Christine. We all know about on spec, which meant we had no idea whether or not we would ever make a dime off this thing. But we did it purely on speculation of selling the finished product. And those are not the ideal conditions under which to write a book, but we would have done it even if we knew it was all going to be for naught. Chris and I were still attending school, by the way, too, full time. But at least we had a presentable manuscript. So this is after 3 years. We have a manuscript. Now what? So my girlfriend's dad at the time, her dad was a television writer who put us in touch with his agent in Los Angeles, who then directed us to a literary agent in New York, a guy named Henry Morrison. Henry sold the book after only a couple of rejections. And we split, now this is 3 years' work, Chris and I split $4,500. 3 years' work.
Honestly, but I know, but hang on. At that time period, that was more like $10,000, right?
Yeah, I guess it would be, yeah.
So you each get $5,000. Guess what? That's a car. I'm just saying.
That's true. Back then it was.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Especially a used car. Absolutely. So we were making more in a couple of months of selling license plate frames than we did, selling this book. But it finally came out May 1975. We were all excited about it. I asked my dad if it would be possible to hold a book launch party at his home. And the closest my dad ever came to celebrating one of his own projects was hosting a Hogan's Heroes Christmas party at the house he shared with my mom at the time, years before that. Mm-hmm. And back to that, Stamford, Connecticut, don't, just keep it quiet, don't celebrate anything. So he said to me, why would you do that? I never do that, meaning have a launch party. And so that was the end of the launch party.
Oh my God. Seriously?
Yeah.
So you didn't have one?
No, I think Chris and I went to Westwood and went to Mario's and had a pizza and then a beer. When we got our advance copies, we called Jack to tell him and asked if we could bring him a hardcover copy. We hadn't spoken now in 2 years. Okay, so 2 years since the end of it, and now it's coming out. And his first reaction was, Robert, what is this book? I jogged his memory about who we were and what we were doing, and he sighed, okay, come on up. He was in for a big surprise. Chris and I drove up to his house with no near-fatal incidents this time, and handed him a book and a T-shirt we made with the book cover printed on it. A photo from the cover of the book. Jack looked genuinely pleased and only slightly bewildered about, as Bruce Dern used to refer to us, the two lames from the Texaco station had managed to produce this beautiful film archive about Jack. 35 years later, Chris and I are still amazed at what we managed to accomplish. To this day, we can't have a phone conversation, Chris and I, without one of us doing a bad Jack Nicholson impression like I'm doing now. And here's the home stretch. Chris and I did attempt one last connection. Showing up unannounced on the set of a Elia Kazan film. This would turn out to be Elia Kazan's last film, called The Last Tycoon, which was shot on location in Hancock Park. The film starred Robert De Niro, but Jack had a cameo in it as a union rep, a meeting with De Niro's Irving Thalberg. When Jack spotted us, we said hi and asked if he had any plans for lunch. Yeah, no lunch, was the terse reply, and Nicholson retreated as swiftly as possible back to the set. Chris and I stood awkwardly among the busy crew members preparing the next scene. That signaled the end of our days hanging out with the big boys. On our way out, we saw Nicholson having lunch at a table set up under some trees. The lames from the Texaco station slunk off in the afternoon, never to see Jack again.
Oh, my God. Bob, you're such a good writer. That is so well written. Honestly, that really did sound like you just told me. That did not sound like you were reading at all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. This story is truly unbelievable. Now, I'm raising my child here in Los Angeles. They are 15 years old, and they go to film school at LACSA. And I am so happy to raise her here. Now, it's not as safe, I don't think, as it was in the early 70s, but I do love the idea of kids or 19-year-olds or 20-year-olds kind of running around Los Angeles and grabbing everything they can to experience this incredible city.
Yes, yeah. And also, to add to that, I didn't mention, but we got in our Volkswagen, my Volkswagen, we drove to Taos, New Mexico to interview Dennis Hopper. We drove to Lake Tahoe to interview Anne Margaret, who was doing her live, show at a hotel there. And so we were traveling all over the place, meeting with people, plus people in LA.
I think it's so exciting. I wonder if, because your dad was actor Bob Crane, if you had or weren't aware of how... let's see, I'm trying to say this. Like, maybe because your dad, it was accessible for you to see fame. Like, you saw fame and you saw he was living like a regular man. You put your pants on, you go to the, you do your regular thing. So maybe you thought that Jack Nicholson, these guys, they're not that unaccessible. They're like my dad. Oh, yeah. They happen to have more money, but it's not a big deal. Yeah. So maybe that is what gave you that confidence to be so bold, because most people would never, ever just go to try to meet Jack Nicholson on a set because they would get kicked out.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you totally. We were partly naive, partly just kind of stupid about it, and partly we would go to the other side and have the world in the palm of our hands and thought we could do anything. We were so dumb.
I think it's really great. It's a wonderful story. And I think, Chris, you said Chris is still alive. You guys together, you guys need to get sweatshirts or something made up that says, what is it? The Texaco, what is it?
No, the two lames from the Texaco station.
Yeah. Two lames from the Texaco station.
That's a great idea.
I think that is so funny that Bruce Stern, that is a perfect, that's a perfect thing that he would say.
Yeah.
Only he would say that.
That's a great idea, Christine. I'm going to get those made now for Christmas, I think. Yeah.
You should. That would be so adorable.
Wonderful.
Yeah, just great. Oh, what a pleasure to talk to you, Bob.
Here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're just really, a complete maven. Yeah. How many podcasts do you have now? Like 7?
I just have 2. No. Hey, man, I've been podcasting Storyworthy for over 12 years, and I have made hundreds of dollars, Bob. Hundreds of dollars.
Yes. I hear you.
Anyway, listen, this has been a great time. Thank you so much. You guys can find out more about Robert over at his author page on Amazon, and you can also find him on Facebook. Just look for Robert Crane. He'll friend you. Why wouldn't he? And you guys don't forget to check out Storyworthy on social media at Storyworthy. And again, please head over to Spotify and listen to my Life in 3 songs, because I'm extremely passionate about this project and I'm so excited about it. It's going very well. All right, you guys, one more time on behalf of the very talented Robert Crane. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you.
My name is Christine Blackburn, saying, make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy Podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.